All right, welcome to our third synchronous session. Today we're going to be talking about plants and animals, and we're just going to go through our invertebrates, so the ones that we seem to be a little less familiar with. So we're going to cover lessons 11 through 13. Common characteristics of plants is they are multicellular, they are eukaryotic, so they have a nucleus, they have cell walls that contain cellulose, and they're covered in a waxy coat. So here's just a general overview of kind of what we're going to be talking about. We can see our ancestral green algae, and then we can look at the evolution of plants in this illustration here. So we have two main types of plants. We have non-vascular and vascular. Our non-vascular do not have vascular tissues. So because of this, they have to be close to the ground so that they can get water, because water can't travel up like they can in our taller plants, which are vascular. And we also call our non-vascular plants bryophytes, and these were the first plants on Earth. And our vascular plants have vascular tissues, and those two tissues are xylem and phloem. Xylem transports water from the soil so that the plants can grow tall, and it just transports one direction. And then phloem transports nutrients throughout the plant. It can transport both directions. Here's our vascular tissue, and so we can see there a little bit more visually that xylem just is going one way, and it's transporting water and minerals up through the plant. And then phloem has a two-way flow so that we can get water and food around the plant. And we can look in the picture down at the bottom there, and we can see those different structures. Now, just looking at our vascular plants, we have two types. We have ones that do not have seeds, and then we have ones that have seeds. Our seedless plants use water to reproduce because they don't have seeds. The sperm has to travel through water. And the embryos grow as sporophytes. So those are our type of plants that have spores. Those are like ferns. And then we have our seed plants. They use cones and flowers to reproduce. And the sperm is carried by pollinators. And so our plants that have flowers are at an advantage because those flowers attract the pollinators. And in our seed plants, the embryo is protected by a seed coat. Then getting even more specific into our seed plants, we have gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms have naked seeds, and they're contained in a cone. And then our angiosperms have flowers or fruit. The fruit develops from flowers. We have 7 different subgroups. And then 2 common types of angiosperms are monocots and dicots. Our monocots, the flower parts are in multiples of 3. The leaves have smooth edges and are often narrow and have parallel veins. And vascular bundles are scattered. And they have a fibrous root system. Our dicots, I missed one. And an embryo has one seed leaf, which is called a cotyledon. So monocot has one seed. And then our dicots, flower parts are in multiples of 4 or 5. The leaves are oval or palmate, shaped like a palm, with net-like veins. The vascular bundles are arranged in a ring. They have a taproot system. And then the embryo has 2 seed leaves, a dicot. Di means 2. All right, so here we can see illustrations of our monocots and of our dicots, so 1 cotyledon and 2 cotyledons. And some of those traits that I was describing in the previous slide, if you're like, I don't know what that means, like fibrous roots or tap roots, we can see a little bit more clearly in this illustration here. So for our monocots, we said 1 cotyledon. Veins are usually parallel. Vascular bundles are usually complexly arranged or kind of scattered. They have a fibrous root system. And then the floral parts are usually in multiples of 3. And then the dicot has 2 cotyledons. The veins are usually net-like. The vascular bundles are usually arranged in a ring. The taproots are usually present, and the floral parts are usually in multiples of 4 or 5. So, recap. We have our plant kingdom, and we split all of our plants into vascular or non-vascular. Then our vascular plants, we can narrow that more specifically by saying if they have seeds or if they do not have seeds. Then our seeded plants, we can break that down further into gymnosperms or angiosperms. Gymnosperms have cones, angiosperms have flowers, and then we can break down our angiosperms even more into our monocots and dicots. So that's our review of plants. And next we're going to go into our animals. All right, animal characteristics, they are eukaryotic, multicellular, heterotrophic, and then what makes animals different than anything else is that they have cephalization, which means that they have sensory organs in a head region. Nothing else that we've looked at so far has that until we get to the animal kingdom. So here's our animal classification. We have our invertebrates, which do not have a backbone, and those are the ones that we're going to be talking about. And there's a lot of those. 95% of all animals are invertebrates. So we have sponges, cnidarians, worms, mollusks, arthropods, and echinoderms. And then the ones we're not going to be talking about today are then the vertebrates, which have a backbone, and those make up the other 5% of all animals. So what is an invertebrate? Invertebrates are animals that do not have backbones. 95% of the animal kingdom is made up of invertebrates. Most can be found in ponds, oceans, and other water environments, but not all of them. Symmetry. Symmetry is the arrangement of individual parts of an object, and we have 3 different types of symmetry. We have radial symmetry, which is all of the parts are arranged in a circle around a central point. Bilateral symmetry, which is if you were to divide it in half down the middle, you would get a right half and a left half that are mirror images of each other. And then we have asymmetrical, which means there's no symmetry, or they have an irregular shape. So here we can see our different types of symmetry. So our beetle is bilateral because we can divide it down the middle to have a left and right mirror images. Coral polyp is radial because we can kind of cut it like a pie, and no matter which way we cut it, we'll have the parts are all radiating around a central portion. And then we have a sponge, which has no symmetry. There's no way that we can divide that where any division will look like another. So we're just going to briefly go through each of our phylum of our invertebrates. So our first one is phylum Porifera, and these are our sponges. So we can see some different pictures there of sea sponges. They are the simplest of all animals. Water moves in and out. They have no nervous system. They are sessile when they're adults, which means they can't move. And they reproduce both sexually and asexually. Next, we have phylum Cnidaria, and this includes our corals and our sea anemones, hydras, jellyfish. So you can see some pictures of them there. We have coral, and then that one right in the middle is a hydra, and then the one on the right is a jellyfish. And some characteristics of Cnidaria. They use tentacles to capture food. They have radial symmetry. They have a simple nerve net. They can move. Some move more than others. They have two different states, polyp and medusa. Usually when they're polyp, they don't move, and then in the medusa form, they do move. And they reproduce sexually and asexually. We have worms, and this is 3 different categories, but we just kind of clump them all into worms. We have flatworms, and that's the blue-looking one there. We have roundworms, which is the one on the right, and that would include like heartworms or roundworms. And then we have annelids, which are segmented worms. Those are the ones we're a little bit more familiar with. That's like our earthworm. Typically our other ones we see are more parasitic. So annelids, which are segmented worms, they have cephalization. They have a bilateral symmetry, so we could divide them down the middle. They have a mouth and a digestive system and a little clump of nerves that acts as a brain. They can move, and they reproduce sexually by exchange of sperm. But they are hermaphrodites, which means they have both the male and the female parts. Next, we have phylum Mollusca. This includes our octopi, squids, slugs, snails, and bivalves, which are like clams and oysters, things that have 2 shells, bivalve. They have a separate head. They have gills that they can respire through, or they can exchange gas through the skin. They can have a closed or an open circulatory system. And closed is when the blood doesn't come in contact with anything else. They can move, and they move either through a siphon, which is like how an octopus moves, or through mucus, which would be how a slug moves. And they have a simple nervous system, or some of them, like an octopus, have a complex nervous system, and octopi are pretty amazing animals. Then we have Arthropoda as our next phylum, and this contains a lot. Our 3 main groups are insects, arachnids, which are spiders, and crustaceans. Arthropods are a group of invertebrates with jointed appendages, such as claws, legs, and antennae, and a hard exoskeleton that protects the arthropod. And they have bilateral symmetry. There are more of 1 million species of arthropods discovered. As our arthropods grow, they molt or shed their old exoskeleton, and then it'll grow a new exoskeleton that allows its body to continue to grow. And the largest group of arthropods is Insecta, which are insects. And here we have a little crustacean there in our picture. And of all our invertebrates, we said most of them are found in water. Our insects are ones that are usually not found in water, and those are our only invertebrates that can fly. Insect characteristics. Since this is our largest group of our arthropods, we're going to look at some characteristics just for our insects. Insects have adapted to living almost everywhere. Over 700,000 species have been classified, and that's just so far. An insect's body has 3 parts. We divide it into the head, the thorax, and the abdomen. The head has 1 pair of antennae and 2 compound eyes and well-developed sense organs. The thorax has 3 pairs of jointed legs and usually 1 or 2 pairs of wings. And the reproductive organs are located in the abdomen. And our insects have an open circulatory system, so oxygen enters through openings on the sides called spiracles. And then arthropods, just in general, have cephalization, so they have that separate head. They have gills, tracheal tubes, or book lungs for respiration. And this diagram here is of a spider, and spiders have book lungs. They have open circulatory systems. They can move with using their muscles, their legs or appendages. They have an exoskeleton, and they have either internal or external fertilization. And then our last group of invertebrates are echinoderms. These are sea urchins, starfish, sea cucumbers, or like our sand dollar there, that's an echinoderm. And our echinoderms use diffusion for respiration, using water to move gases throughout their body. They have a simple nervous system. They can move with tube feet, and they have external fertilization. And that's going to be the